Well, I'm now here with Neela Montgomery, who is the CEO of Crate and Barrel. Thank you very much indeed. It's very nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Gosh, things are happening fast at the moment, aren't they?
Yes, indeed. Ever more so. And I think it's been interesting, even in the time that I've been at Crate and Barrel for 18 months, how much we've changed as a business. You know, we've introduced new partnerships. We're started to partner with a furniture rental business. We're partnering on registry with Universal Registry. Just all these new kind of consumer trends that we're having to engage with, as well as obviously continuing to improve our brand experience in stores and online, etc.
And how do you, as a CEO, manage all the various different elements now of the business and work out what on earth the priorities should be that everybody should work on? Because, I mean, there's so many things now.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important question as a CEO, because what can happen is everybody's pursuing the shiniest new thing,
Yes.
and it's actually, in the short term, a relatively small part of your revenue, and it's very much a test and learn. And retail isn't typically well suited to test and learn because scale is so important. So the way that I've approached that is to set at the beginning of the year a very clear kind of strategic agenda and strategic priorities, maybe 6 initiatives, and then to have a couple that are kind of R&D type initiatives. So our partnership with Zola was one of those. Zola's a universal registry. And what we decided is, okay, we want a small dedicated team to work on some of these kind of more test and learn R&D type initiatives, so that we're not distracting our core team too much. And then when it reaches a certain scale, we'll reintegrate it.
And the business now is becoming more complicated. I mean, I know that a lot of people start talking about multi-channel and e-commerce, whatever. It seems a little bit of a strange differentiation now. It is all retailing. How do you work out the balance between things that you want to do physically and things that you want to do virtually, and the interrelationship between the two of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously the channel where we execute and kind of optimize our experience. I think it actually is a bigger shift is actually happening before that in our marketing activity, because we're really having to think about what is the impact of social media? How much do we spend on Facebook advertising versus traditional catalogs? Or, you know, there's a lot of different kind of customer analytics and data that now goes into determining how do you prioritize spending on customers, what's the segmentation and valuation that you use. We talk a lot about lifetime value. Yes. And then when you've decided which customer you think you're going to prioritize for investment and how, what really matters to that customer and the experience. So for example, in furniture, we've decided that's a very high value customer, very loyal. But what really matters is that they have an incredible experience from a service perspective. So we created Design Studio, and we put in 9,000 design 9,000 design consultations with customers, where you can really come and have an in-depth conversation with an associate using a 3D rendering of your space. And we think that's a much better investment than, say, having a lot of traffic and low value interactions with customers. So you always have to prioritize. You have to ensure that all your interactions are good, but there are places where you need to innovate, and those require prioritization.
And within that context, as you see it, is the role of the store changing?
Very much so, and we're seeing much more customers are coming there to look and test a product. Now, for us, we're lucky in that furniture has always been a showroom as such, because
you want to touch and feel. And
you can't walk out of the store with your sofa. So in that sense, that's always been our model, and that's excellent. But even, you know, in our more traditional categories like kitchen or entertaining, you know, people are so empowered before they arrive at the store, and ensuring that your associates have the same level of knowledge is actually quite difficult. Yes. And so one of the things we pride ourselves on is kind of our associates knowing a lot about their product, but increasingly they also need to know, how is that product being used on social media? What photos are customers taking? What user-generated content do we have? And we're really trying to make that very digestible for our associates, so that they feel that they can have a conversation with the customer with an equal amount of knowledge, if not more.
Now, you've closed a few stores. Mm-hmm. What's the evaluation that you look at now when you look at the estate that you've got, the estate that you want, and how you transition from A to B?
Yeah, so we have about 108 stores across the US and Canada, including CB2, which is our highest growth brand. And we're actually opening stores in CB2. We opened 4 last year and we'll open 3 this year. With Crate and Barrel, I think we have roughly the right number of stores, but in some markets we're just overstored. So we had 8 stores in the Chicago market, and we decided to close 1.
Well, that
taking
was
us
your
down.
home market,
Yes,
I
but
suppose.
8 stores of our size is quite
Yes.
a lot, and we just don't need 8 stores in that market anymore. We probably need 5. So over time, we'll reduce our portfolio in those markets. There may be opportunities for a smaller format. But for example, in the same year, we opened a store in Vegas, and we'd spent 10 years looking for a location in Vegas. We opened that store and we're delighted. So, that's how we'll adapt and shift our portfolio over time.
Now, you mentioned a few alliances that you were doing. I think there's this new concept. I would sort of call it sort of ecosystem sort of brands and organisations. Do you see Crate and Barrel being, looking to the future, the centre of a whole series sort of eco brands that are around it, that support it, that are some that are may have a financial relationship, some not, to ensure that the customer is now in the centre of absolutely everything?
Yes, I mean, I think for Crate and Barrel, it's an interesting for us to have a portfolio, because we'd have to think very carefully about the curation, because that's what we're famous for, the curation of brands. Therefore, they'd have to serve a very specific need for a customer at a specific time and have that design aesthetic, because we're only with you at a very specific occasion in your life or a specific time of year, unlike someone that has a lot more frequency of interaction, like a Target or a Walmart. So if we did that, it would be because we believe that we could create a series of boutiques, brands and boutique voices with very distinctive voices. And we will do some of that. I don't know if I would describe it as an ecosystem. That sounds probably more than that. I'd say more a curation of brands.
Now, curation has always been an integral part of the business ever since it was first started with Crate and Barrels. How important is the merchant? We're moving into a world of algorithms and maths. How important to you is the merchant who loves products, who has a design sense, who can put a collection together, who can colour coordinate in this world?
Yeah, ever more important, actually.
So you see it more important rather than less important going
Yes,
forward?
I mean, I think obviously at a CEO level, I don't think that's enough anymore, because you have to be able to manage technology and marketing shifts, as I've described, and partnerships. And so I think it would be increasingly challenging if your only background was product and creativity and merchant to be the CEO. I think that transition's harder than it used to be. But I think the value of creativity and product and merchandising is ever greater. I just hired a new chief merchant, actually, and it's fascinating. He's much younger. How he thinks about product, because he thinks very much about how it will look on Instagram as how it might look on a store.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting, because it always has been.
Yeah.
What does it look like on the shelf? What does it look like in the store?
And so a new generation.
So do you think you'll find different types of product? I mean, as a result of looking at it through that different lens, a different type of products emerging within the store over
Yes, I think we will, because one of the things that we've always prided ourselves on is that we have this incredibly iconic designs, and some of our products have been in our assortment for 20, 25 years, and that's wonderful. But the influence of fashion on our consumer, especially through social media, the fact that everyone's now kind of an amateur designer through House, means that there is that need for faster fashion and trend, even in home furnishings. And if you don't have somebody who's kind of connected to that world, that's going to be harder and harder to achieve. So that is a shift that's happening.
Now, is that person, not necessarily that particular individual, but do you see this sort of mix now of the merchant working very closely with the data, and how are you trying to fuse those two things together? Are they the same individuals? Are they different individuals?
Well, it's interesting. In the US, there's often a chief product or creative officer and a chief merchant officer, and there's sometimes different roles. Europe tends to have them more in one. I think they are different. They're left brain, right brain. But interestingly, what I'm finding is that the chief merchant, it's a given that they have to be data centric. And financially astute, etc. What's interesting is you can't just be a chief product person who's out there with no understanding or acceptance of data and financials anymore. I don't think you ever could actually, but ever less so in this world.
But you could with your personality, you could push through things on instinct.
You could try, you could. And so look, we still need those people to be ahead of where the customer's at, right? So you still need them to be forecasting trend and moving beyond where the customer wants to go. Otherwise, you'll end up with a faster horse type syndrome in product, which you don't want. But equally, you can't have someone who ignores the data of the product they have launched. So I think that's the blend we're looking for.
Well, finally, how would you describe, maybe in one word or two, I might give you three, the times that we're living at the moment, the times you're living, when you wake up in the morning, you go to the office? What does it feel like?
Fast and furious and exciting.
Well, as long as exciting is part of that mix, I think that's not bad to ask for on a Monday morning. Neela Montgomery, the CEO of Crane & Barrel, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.